Hello, this is a video on how to play the board game Fanorona. Fanorona is a two-player ancient board game from Madagascar. This version is played, right? There are, I guess, many versions, and we'll be talking about the version that's played on a 9x5 board consisting of intersecting lines. So basically what you'll need to do is you'll first need to draw a 9, right? So 9 squares horizontally by, not really squares, I guess. I guess it's more 8 squares horizontally and 4 squares vertically, right? Now that you look at it, but in terms of drawing, it would be, I guess, 9 intersections or 9 points horizontally, and then 5 intersections or 5 points vertically, right? So you'll have 9 pieces horizontally and 5 pieces vertically fitting. Each player starts with 22 pieces of their own color, which are placed on the board at the beginning. Okay. So notice how the board is drawn, right? It's drawn such that you have, I guess, a sort of string pattern. Okay. And so the best way to draw this really is to start from one corner. Make sure to connect, draw a diagonal line through a bunch of points until you hit the bottom of the board. Go back up, draw another diagonal line, right? Do the same thing for this, right? Diagonal line, go back down, draw a diagonal line, okay? And then, I guess for the rest of them, you'll sort of, once again, you'll really just need to, essentially, the easiest way to look at it is just that, and you'll see this when we do the moving around, but it's visible here on the centerpiece right now, but it will be once we move pieces around on the other sides as well. Each, I guess, you can divide this into 8 stars, right? So if you've drawn it correctly, you'll be able to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stars here, as well as a actually more, right? You'll be able to see, it really depends. Essentially you'll just have a star configuration. It's sort of hard to explain, but what you'll want to do, I guess, is, and so an easier way to really look at it is that each, I guess, part of the board consists of diamonds, right? We have a diamond here, right? A diamond here, and so it's just interconnected diamonds essentially. And so if you have that pattern, then you have the board drawn properly. I do apologize, it is hard to explain how to draw the board, but I am doing my best. And so with that out of the way, let's just talk about the actual game. You'll want 2 pieces of different colors, one for you, one for your opponent. Typically, the player with the lighter color starts first. In this case, we are using white, and so that would be the color that starts first. But let's say you are using like red and, I guess, I don't know, you could use really any color, red and yellow for example, then yellow would be the one to typically start first. And so players alternate turns to play, right? The objective of the game is to capture all of your opponent's pieces to win. And so players can move a piece to any adjacent empty intersection along the connecting lines. There are 2 types of moves. One where a player can capture the opponent's pieces, and another where no opponent piece can be captured. A non-capturing move cannot be made if a player has 1 or more capturing moves. Essentially, if you can capture a piece, you cannot choose to not capture it. That is not an option here. If a move is available for which you could capture a piece, you must make that move. So, in this case, notice how I can move to, I guess this, right? I can move to this yellow here. We'll talk about the significance of this entire, I guess, line here. And so, the capturing the opponent's piece can be done by either moving next to the opponent's piece, that's called an approach, or withdrawing away from the opponent's piece, which was placed next to the player's piece. That's called withdrawal. So if you move away from your opponent's piece, then it captures your opponent's piece. So notice how I decided to move there, right? So you essentially, I mean, at the start, it doesn't really, you're beside your opponent's pieces, so that doesn't really count. But if you're right next to an opponent's piece and you move away from it, you can capture that piece. If you're one space away from an opponent's piece and you move right beside it, you capture the piece as well. So you capture a piece by moving right beside it, or if you're already touching it, by moving away from it. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to we'll capture that piece there, right? So I moved beside that piece, I captured it. Right? It's arbitrary, right? It's a somewhat weird board game, and we'll talk about what just happened there. But it's a somewhat weird board game because you only need to move next to or move away from your opponent's piece to capture it. You don't actually have to move on it. So, when an opponent's piece is captured, all other opponent pieces along the same line and direction beyond that piece are also captured and removed from the board. So, provided that, so let's say, okay, same line and direction, okay, how do we best illustrate this here? So, notice this piece right here, right? What I can do is I can move one to the right. That's a withdrawal move, right? And that will capture my opponent's piece. And all other opponent pieces along the same line beyond that piece that are not interrupted by your own piece, right? So if I move right here, it should, correct me, I do apologize if I am wrong here, but if I pull a withdrawal, that means there's a piece beside me and I move away from that piece. That allows me to capture a piece, right? And approach is when, if let's say I moved to this piece, that would put me directly beside this piece, I could capture that piece. So a withdrawal would allow me to capture all the pieces in this line up until I meet my own piece, right? So I cannot capture this far piece here because it is blocked by my own piece, but any sequence of pieces of the opponents that are not interrupted by any of my pieces that are on the same line, I can go ahead and capture. And so that's what we'll try to do here. I'm going to go for a withdrawal here, and I captured both of those pieces there, as you can see, right? You capture all the pieces in the same line, right? Just common sense, the ones that aren't really interrupted. And let's talk about what just happened there now. So, successive captures are allowed in the same turn as long as it's not in the same direction as the previous capture. Okay, so you have to think ahead on Fanorona, sorry. I am playing against a very, I guess, high level of difficulty AI, and so I will lose here, right? Like for sure. There's no way around it, but if you're playing against someone else, right, they're not programmed like this AI is to automatically know all the moves. And so what you'll have to do is you'll have to think ahead. It's not going to be obvious at first, right? There are going to be certain moves that allow you to make successive captures. Remember, let us talk about Fanorona once more. Let us sum it up. You want to capture all of your opponent's pieces. You can move adjacently. So you can make a non-capturing move, which is just moving to an empty space, only if you have no capturing moves available on the board. As of right now, I have capturing moves, right? And so that's why I can't, like, notice, you might be saying, why can't I move this piece here to this empty space here? That's because I have capturing moves available on the board, right? And so a non-capturing move cannot be made if a player has one or more capturing moves. And so capturing the opponent's piece can be done by moving next to a piece. That's an approach capture. Or if you're already beside a piece, so I'm already beside this piece, I can move away. That's a withdrawal capture. Okay, and so let's say you capture an opponent's piece. All other pieces along the same line and direction are also captured and removed from the board as long as they are not interrupted by an enemy intersection or player's own piece. Okay, so let us say direction, meaning you might be saying, what do you mean by direction? Right, so if I make a horizontal move, all the enemy pieces in that horizontal line are captured. Right, if I make a vertical capture, as you can see here, all the pieces vertically are captured. Similarly, if I make a diagonal capture, all the pieces along that diagonal line would get captured. Successive captures are allowed in the same turn, right? And so let's say I do have to look for a hypothetical scenario here, so give me a second. But let's say okay, this should, I believe this would let me do it here. Yeah, so successive captures are allowed in the same turn as long as they're not in the same direction as the previous capture. So what we're going to do is we're going to go for a withdrawal capture here, moving away from a piece here to the right. I can then, right, and this is what I was looking for to demonstrate, I can then make a successive capture, right? So I moved away from that piece, doing a withdrawal capture. I can then move beside this piece right here, right? There's a piece right here. If I move here, I'll be right beside it diagonally. I can then move beside that piece, and that will allow me to make a diagonal capture. Since it's not in the same direction as the previous capture, I can make a successful capture. So that's what we'll do here. Okay, this is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Looks like this AI is not so smart. So I was just praising it, but that's okay, right? So what did we do here? We did a horizontal capture here, right? We were right here. There was a piece right here. We were right here. We did a withdrawal, capturing that piece. We then did an approach here, capturing that diagonal piece. Successive captures are allowed as long as they are not in the same direction as the previous capture. Keyword previous capture. You might be saying, hey, on the same turn, we just captured horizontally there by moving away. However, we then captured diagonally. And so in terms of looking at it from a right now perspective, our previous capture was diagonal. Our previous capture was horizontal, but we are only worried about the previous capture. The rules state that successive captures are allowed in the same turn as long as they are not in the same direction as the previous capture. Our previous capture was diagonal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a approach capture here. That's going to take all of them in the same line right there, to the right there. So now it's my turn to make a capture. I do have to think strategically here, right? You might be saying, why can't I move these pieces? Right? You can only make non-capturing moves if you have no capturing moves. At this point, I still have the ability to make a capturing move, so I do have to still continue capturing. Now, give me a second here. And so, I guess we'll just, it's hard to sort of plan ahead here for what move you're going to do. So, right, my opponent is beating me here quite badly. So I have no capture moves available here. So that's why I'm now able to move my non-capturable. Right, so that was an approach or withdrawal. So we'll just finish the game for the sake of finishing it. I feel like we've explained enough. Right, and so just to sum it up, 9x5 board with intersecting lines, right? As I was talking about the diamond configuration here, right? As you can see, everything, it looks like it's consisting of little tiny diamonds. And so, I mean, other than that, an easier way to, I guess, deal with it is just note that you're going to have, I guess, a little up-down zigzag pattern when you're drawing, right? And so that's also an easier way to draw the board. Each player has 22 pieces, right? The lighter color typically starts first, per tradition.
Players alternate to play. The objective of the game is to capture all of your opponent's pieces to win. Players can move a piece to any adjacent empty intersection along the connecting lines. There are two types of moves. One where a player can capture opponent's pieces and another where no opponent piece can be captured. A non-capturing move cannot be made if a player has one or more capturing moves. So, capturing the opponent's piece can be done by either moving next to the opponent's piece, which is called an approach, or moving away from the opponent's piece. That's called a withdrawal. When an opponent's piece is captured, all other opponent pieces along the same line and direction are also captured and removed from the board, as long as it's not interrupted by an empty intersection or a player's own piece. Successive captures are allowed in the same turn as long as it's not in the same direction as the previous capture. In this case, we're moving, so we're going to get captured there, and that's it. So we lost there, right? But that wraps up how to play Fanorona. I hope you enjoyed this abstract board game. Thank you for watching.